back to another episode of the Higher Level podcast. So today, joining myself and James Doolan, we have Jack Tank Shore. Jack, thanks very much for coming on, mate.
Yeah, no problem, lads. No problem at all.
So obviously you're coming off the back of another big win and dominant performance. You're a bit removed from the fight now. Have you had the opportunity to have a look back?
Yeah, I watched it back, obviously, when I got back in the UK. And overall, happy with the performance. He was an awkward sort of style of guy to fight on short notice. Obviously, I sort of did my last spar before even getting matched with him due to the opponent change. So we didn't have a great deal of time to prepare specifically then for a southpaw who's long and rangy like that. But thankfully I'm pretty well rounded, so I managed to just get in there and sort of fight my fight and come out on top. Yeah,
it's another win. Not only that, another finish. And you got to get out there and fight in Fight Island. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was a different one for sure. Obviously, before I went, a lot of people contact me it'll be a great trip. It'll be like Dubai and stuff like that out there. But I don't think they obviously realised the quarantining and then obviously the sleeping pattern we had to get ourselves into. Obviously, because we were fighting at on American time pretty much. So it was a matter of doing most of our work in the night and sleeping through the day. So I didn't get to see all the luxuries that Abu Dhabi and all that has, but it was a good trip. Good people. Obviously, I had Brett out there as well, so it was an enjoyable one, and one I can take a lot of positives from, because there was a lot of different factors that we had to deal with fight week that you probably wouldn't usually have to deal with on your average fight week. So it was definitely a valuable experience.
And in terms of obviously the no crowd situation, how did you find that going in there, not having all that background noise, not having the crowd? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was, to be honest, it wasn't too bad. I mean, I didn't think it would affect me anyway. The only time I really noticed it was sort of the walkout and the intros with Bruce Buffer, before the actual fight kicked off. But as soon as sort of Herb Dean said go, it was all systems going. I sort of switched off from it like I usually do. Pretty much I take a decent following with me wherever I go to fight. So this is obviously the first time since turning pro that I haven't I had big crowd support. But I didn't feel the need for it in there. I didn't feel like it affected my performance, and I was fairly confident going in that it would go that way. But obviously, what you think it's going to be like and what it's actually like can be two different things sometimes. But overall, I know I didn't really notice it until, like I said, before, and then obviously after coming out of the cage, there's no fans shouting at you on your way out. So it was one that I wouldn't, if they said to me again, now you've got to fight out the crowd, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, it's one thing that's noticeable about you when you're just in your walkouts and stuff. It's how composed you are. Obviously, for your age, you just seem very composed as you're walking out there. And James, I'll bring you in this. You obviously saw Jack's fight, and just give us your thoughts on the fight as well, and Jack's performance.
Performance was excellent, man. Again, well done. I think a lot of people don't take into account some of the variables, like what you were saying about fighting during the middle of the night. The quarantine and stuff was an absolute pain in the arse. We were obviously there with Danny, and it was kind of cool, but at the same time it wasn't cool. And then obviously you had the added issues of different opponents. So it showed a level of maturity going in there. Like you said, you'd finished sparring by the time you got that guy. So I'd imagine you'd have a wee bit of time to look at some tape and shit, but the training's already done by the time you get there. It's good, man. I think it just shows like you're completely professional in everything that you do. You're going to have opponent pullouts and changes and all that shit. It's something out with your control, but everything that you've managed to control, you've done perfectly and turned up and obviously got a result and another good performance.
Yeah, I appreciate that, James. Frank. And like you said, it's a crazy old sport, isn't it, MMA? With you look at something like football or rugby, if you're scheduled to play a team on this date, that team's going to turn up and play on that date. Whereas with MMA and boxing, a lot of variables can change that you can't control. But I just try and focus on the things I am in control of. So my diet, my training, my mental prep, and just sort of let everything else, go to the back of my mind. And I've had pull-outs on a week's notice, a day's notice. So it's one of them now where I feel like I just got to fight whoever's in front of me, and obviously it takes a special kind of person to be in this sport and have that sort of mindset. So for people on the outside looking in, I don't think they appreciate sometimes, how mentally tough fighters are. Just because they see guys lose in the cage and stuff like that. I know hundreds of fighters who took short notice fights or changed opponent on short notice. Whereas, like I say, you don't get that in a lot of professional sports where the team you're playing changes. So to be able to take that, in your stride, as well as obviously the fact you've got to get in a cage with someone who's trying to knock you out or put you to sleep, then, but all fighters deserve credit for it. Obviously, not only me, but everyone who steps in there on 12 weeks notice, or some people on 2 weeks notice. I think people need to take that into consideration a little bit more before they're so quick to sort of slate guys online.
See, one thing on that, dude, when we had your dad on, I had brought up the IMMAF thing about your experience there, and your dad had mentioned that one of the benefits was you went there not knowing who you were going to fight, because it was drawn like when you got there and as you progressed through the tournament and stuff. And I guess that'll stand you in good stead with stuff like guys pulling out and getting a different opponent and stuff like that. Do you think that's a kind of fair comment?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, when I remember signing up to when I made the team then for the IMMAF, and they sort of released the categories, I think there was some like 30, maybe 40 guys in my weight at the time. So there's no way you can watch tape and study for 30 different guys. You just got to sort of let what will be will be. Like my old man has explained on you before, they drew the fight the night before, so it would be a matter of, you may watch one or two tapes, or you may have seen him fight the day before, but other than that, you haven't specifically trained for a certain style of opponent. And I've had that sort of adversity in my pro career as well. I think like 1, 2 or 3 times on Cage Warriors, I've had pull-outs during fight week. So it just sort of put me in the mindset of, not to rely too much on a game plan. Don't get me wrong, I always sort of eye up the strengths and weaknesses of the opponent and try and work out where I can obviously have the easiest path to victory. But a lot of the time, fights don't go the way you plan them anyway in your head. So I think a lot of the time I just try and go out and fight the fight that I want to fight. And if I've got to adapt and change things up on the job, then I'll do that. I tend to find when I do that and not focus too much on the opponent, that's when I perform best.
Yeah, the other thing, I think we've spoken about this in the past, James, as well, is the way your career's progressed, Jack. It seems to me you're a blueprint for other younger fighters and how to develop throughout your career, because it just seems like you've done it right with the IMMAF and continually fighting better opponents. When you look back at your journey so far, do you feel that from that first fight to now, the way it's been handled has worked perfectly for you?
Yeah, definitely. I know there's a lot of guys now in my gym and guys in Cage Warriors that doesn't even train with me that are trying to I think they're trying to put them on the same sort of path. Obviously, I'm not into padding records or anything like that, but there's definitely a progression that needs to be done for someone who they think can get to the top level. Like when I fought in Cage Warriors, I was fighting European opposition, British opposition, and naturally fighting better guys every time. And you'll always get a naysayers. I remember being like 3 or 4-0 in Cage Warriors. And I remember people on Twitter were saying that I was being, fed fights, and the only reason I'm with Cage Warriors is because of my old man's matchmaking, the undercard and stuff like that. So you always get the negatives of it. But obviously, I think if you look back in the long run, the way I was managed by obviously my coaches and Graham, it's done a lot for me, physically and mentally in my career, because now I'm proof that you can be, brought through that way and still compete with the best guys in the world and compete with them on short notice and then, face adversity and still pull it off. So I would say blueprint wise, it's a pretty good one to have, and for younger guys coming up to look on and try and sort of base their career on that.
Yeah, and I know, James, it's something you've looked at as well, with the way Jack's come through and got to where he's got to in the UFC.
Yes, I think it's like it's obviously you're proving it now, man. It's like a tried and tested path where some guys get to the UFC and you can tell they've missed some of the steps that you've took, and they just look out of place there. Whereas straight away, like, I know you turned the UFC down, which we'll ask about that in a minute, but it's like you can see you in there and you're like, this kid's going to be there for a while. He's going to be in the UFC like probably for the rest of his fighting career. He's going to make a run at the title. He's going to be advancing up through the rankings and stuff like that. And it's just the way that you've went about it. It's just set everything up for you. Whereas so many people are in such a rush to get there. They get there and they get exposed, and then it's like you've just been exposed on the biggest platform in the world, and now you've got nowhere to go. You have to go back to these regional shows, fighting for less money, and I think that the chance of working your way back to the UFC is very slim. Whereas the process you took, I remember you fighting amateur, and there was an excitement about you turning pro, and then before you know it, you're like in the title picture at Cage Warriors, and it almost seemed like it was just a matter of time. Do you know what I mean? When you see that way kind of coming to fruition, sometimes you're like, everybody knew what was going to happen. It was almost like inevitable, but it was because of the way you've been managed almost to an extent with your dad and stuff. And like you said, you're taking riskier and riskier fights all the time, to the extent where the last kind of couple fights at Cage Warriors are UFC level fights anyway. And you could tell by the time you got to UFC, you were perfectly ready to be there. You're going to win. You're going to progress through the rankings, and you kind of look like you're going to be a genuine kind of title challenger in a few fights' time, which is cool.
Yeah, like I when I sort of look back on just after the IMMAF, like when I turned pro, I feel like the way I've been brought through as a pro, I've sort of ticked everything off the list. Like, I went sort of 5-0, 6-0. I'd had submission wins, knockout wins, and I was the up and coming guy on the Welsh scene. And then obviously, like, I went away to fight, so I ticked off the traveling away to fight. That not many people get to do before they fight in the UFC. Then I fought like Vaughan Lee, which was the UFC vet. I ticked that one off, and then obviously they brought me back to Cardiff, where I sort of was the main event. So I was training for the 5-round fight. The title fight, like being the last guy on, so you rang about all day, the trailers, the big build up, and like you said, I feel like I've done and experienced a lot before even signing for the UFC. That a lot of guys who get the UFC, especially when they come sort of off like the regional scene or the more domestic scene, don't get to experience. So they get there and then they're a little bit like the deer in the headlights. Whereas I sort of felt like in my UFC debut, the fact that I was fighting in a big arena and had all these cameras and lights off me, it was just sort of second nature and something that didn't faze me, which enabled me to just go in there and be able to focus on fighting and winning the fight. So yeah, I definitely, I got to put a lot of that down to Cage Warriors as well. Like Graham, Ian, all the staff there, they've always sort of had that push behind me and definitely did a good job of sort of, like you said, putting me in good stead, that hopefully now I can show that I can do the same thing in the UFC as I did in Cage Warriors, and that's quickly move through the ranks and start pushing to the upper end of the division.
Yeah. And obviously James touched on it there, you initially turned down the UFC, which is not an easy thing to do, but is that something you and your dad sat and spoke about when that initial offer came in? And you just decided it just wasn't the right time?
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot of say in it, to be honest. Like, as you can imagine, like I was 3-0, 21 years of age. Thought I was this beast, because I had 2 big wins on Cage Warriors. So, in my head, I was like, yeah, let's do it. But I didn't have a say straight away. Obviously, Graham had spoken to my dad, and before they even came to me with the fact I'd been offered, it was like, you're not ready yet. And looking back, it was 1,000,000% the right decision. I mean, at the time, like if Jack Shaw at 13-0 fought Jack Shaw at 3-0, it would be a whitewash. That's probably how I would have gone in there. Probably would have gone in, maybe won one and lost a few, and ended up back on the Cage Warrior scene probably, and I would have had to make a big climb again. But a good thing about that was it obviously showed me that obviously Graham being my manager, he had the best interest at that, because he could quite easily have obviously where you pay your manager their fee, he could have cashed in, took his took his bigger payment, took his percentage from the UFC pay, and had 2 fights out of me, and that had been it, you know. But he didn't. He sort of seen the bigger picture, and obviously my old man is clued up as well and seen the bigger picture along with him. So it was definitely the right choice to turn it down the first time. And again, I got offered a short notice fight then after I beat Vonley, but I was injured and I couldn't take that one. So that one sort of stung a little bit more. But then Cage Warriors, so I think they sort of recognised then that I wasn't far away, and they came to me like with a new contract and was like, look, we want to put you main event in Cardiff and sort of build the show around you, and we want to pay you this much, blah, blah, blah. So it was like, they could have quite easily, you know, I'd sold them a good few tickets in Wales. They could have quite easily sent me on my way then. But again, they looked at the bigger picture, put a lot of effort and time and money into me. And, you know, it just put me in even better stead. You know, even though it took an extra year, it just made me that much better and put me that much more mentally ready to go in there when I did actually sign then.
Yeah, I guess it shows the old man knows what he's doing anyway, doesn't he?
Dad knows best, that's what they say.
Something about your dad, obviously, we spoke to him when he was telling us a wee bit about what his nerves are like when it's coming up to your fight. Is that something that's pretty noticeable for you? Do you see a change in your dad when it's getting close?
Yeah, to be honest, on Fight Island was the best I've seen him. You know, usually, like I remember when we went to Copenhagen and when we was driving to the venue, he was dead silent. Like I could tell he was nervous. But this time he was a lot calmer. I didn't notice that he was nervous, and usually he's like kecking in the changing room and looking for a bin to be sticking. But there was none of that this time. He was fairly chilled out. So I don't know if it was a one-off, if he was getting better, but he's been in some states. Like I remember warming up for like Cage Warriors title fights, and because we had our own little changing room with like shower tank and urine, being sick in the toilet, and I'm like, I just think that what's he so nervous about? Like, is this something I don't know that I should know? Like, well, is he sending me out like a lamb to the slaughter or something? But that's a testament, obviously, to my other coaches as well. Corner Carl and Gary, you know, they're 2 old heads. Carl has been about the sport of MMA since it pretty much began, and obviously Gary Lockett, former world boxing champion, has coached world boxing title fights, British. So he's been there and seen it and done it as well. So, you know, my old man will openly tell me he lets a lot of slack fall on them in the warm up, you know, just so he can get himself mentally right. Once the fight starts, you know, he seems to switch it off, and he seems to be, you know, he's like a little fly in your ear, constantly hearing throughout the fight. He's so switched on with what he sees and making sure that you're listening and stuff like that. But he'll tell you the build up to the fight is probably not his favourite part of the experience.
And obviously then, with the no crowd there, I'm assuming you could hear him a lot better.
Well, it's actually, again, it's like, it was a weird one because him and Carl are very, it's more so like Carl relayed the information to my old man, or Carl and Gary, and my old man is like the voice that I sort of switch on to, so there's always only one voice in the corner. But again, this one, like you said, you would expect for it to be even more clear with a no crowd, but he didn't seem to say a lot this time, and I don't know if that was because I was just doing what they wanted of me, but I didn't seem to hear him, especially in the second round, like, because I got the takedown so early. It was just basic instructions every now and then, rather than, you know, a lot of the time he's on you, you know, constantly instructing and constantly directing, like, you know, left arm here, right leg here, do this, do that. Whereas this time it was more like, I think he could see that what he wanted from me was already going on. So maybe that's what it was. But it was like, it was a very weird one, because it's the quietest it's ever been, and it would have been the easiest it'd ever be to hear him. But he tend to not be as vocal this time, and I just think it's because the fight was going to plan, obviously.
And I guess the benefit is really having a Welsh accent or a Scottish accent, is the opposite corner can't understand us anyway. So
that's it. I say we don't need to do none of this this code that some of the corners speak. They can't understand us anyway.
I thought they might put subtitles up for like James in the corner on your dad or something like that, but that'd have been a job for the guy doing the subtitles. Just to go back to the fight itself, obviously it was you got to finish the second round. It was a dominant win. Was the plan to go out there and just dominate him and then wear him down before doing what you did and get the finish? Yeah,
we knew, like, obviously, again, we couldn't train. We didn't get to do any specific training for him, but obviously just from watching tape, you could see he's a good striker. He was southpaw, long-rangey guy. So it was a matter of just don't give him don't stay out far away from him, because then you're in his kicking range. He favoured his rear leg, mid kick, high kick. And he was sort of just getting his face early on, whether that be with clinch, takedowns, or whether it just be sort of fighting on the inside. But, he was a BJJ black belt as well, but I just felt, having watched him, my grappling for MMA was a lot higher than his. And naturally, when we got in there, I closed the distance. I could see he was uncomfortable and nervous of the takedown. So once I got in his face and got... That's why I was in sort of no rush to take him down immediately. Or, when I had the sort of seatbelt on him, I was in no rush to take the back, because I could feel him burning out. I could feel, obviously... Having watched my tape, I knew he was only looking for the back take. So I thought, just ride him out here for a couple of minutes, put some shots in, and slowly wear him down. So that was the first round. And then obviously when I hit the takedown so fast in the second round, I think I had 3.5 minutes to work. I knew I would have him out there then, just because I landed in like a dominant. I'm good from top half, and especially my ground and pound. I know they'll eventually either give their back or get stuck in a position where I can sort of pin and strike. And once I hit that top in the second round, I just knew to take my time, open him up, and then he'd either give the back or obviously I'll just hold position and keep striking, and that was how it went.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed coming off this fight as well, and I'm sure you've noticed it too, there's been a few comparisons to a certain Canadian fighter, Mr. GSP, which, that is high praise indeed. When you hear stuff like that, what goes through your mind when you hear that? Because
it was obviously, it's a great compliment to have off someone like Bisping and Felder. For anybody to be compared to GSP is obviously very, very high praise. But where I completely agree with him or not, I'm not sure. I got a bit of a way to go yet before I'll be happy to be compared to obviously one of the greatest of all time. But I'm obviously doing something right, I suppose, if they're making them comparisons. I do base my style a little bit off Joe, not base it off him, but I can see why we would draw similarities. Yeah. Obviously, I do work off the jab a lot, and I sort of go high every top pressure and takedowns. But like I said, after the fight, if I can achieve a quarter of what GSP achieved, then I can retire an happy man. But hopefully, I can keep going and keep allowing him to make those comparisons with my performances. Fingers crossed. Yeah,
that's it. And the other thing is, obviously, you've got the full country Wales behind you. I think it's no secret people are looking at you, Jack, and see that you're a future title contender. How do you deal with that sort of pressure? Because there is a lot of pressure involved in that.
Yeah, I try and put it in the back of my head. Obviously, I've had a big following now for about a year, a good 2 years, sort of even stemming back to like fighting in the Newport Centre. So I've always had a lot of people bigging me up. And Abbott Leary, where I live, is a small community. So everyone in the town sort of knows me and supports me. So it's something I've sort of just got used to. It's all well and good people obviously telling you you're going to be a title contender and you're going to do this and you're a beast and this and that. But you got to sort of not let your ego take over. I try not to. I try and stay humble and put it to the back of my head. And there's plenty of guys in the gym who, the bigger, stronger guys who I can go with that'll give me an hard time. And I like to jump in with those guys now and then to keep me humble and think like, look, don't believe what everyone's saying just because people are saying this. You still got to work hard. I still got to train in my head like a novice, just try to soak up everything I can. I still train as hard during fight camp as I did when I first turned pro, albeit a little bit smarter now, a little bit more advanced. But I still try and grind like I'm sort of the worst person in the room. Because obviously, growing up, I was always like a little chubby kid, so I've never been athletically gifted, never been physically gifted, but I was always quite good technically, and I always picked up technique fast. So I try and do, although I'm working out to obviously become a better athlete and make sure I'm physically strong and physically capable of competing with the best guys in the world, that I still try and soak up as much technique as I can, in order to keep those people saying what they're saying, and in order to not sort of let anyone down, but to not make anyone look stupid. I don't want people saying you're this, you're that, and then go out there and I let myself down in certain areas. So I sort of deal with it by just training hard and try and put it in the back of my head more than anything. I'm always thankful and grateful for all the support and all the hype that everyone sort of puts on me, but I put it in the back of my head and I try not to let it no add any extra pressure. I just don't think about it. If I'm honest, I try and just ignore. As grateful as I am for it, I do just try and ignore it. And unless it's coming from someone like obviously my coaches or whatever, I try and just thank them and let that be that and put it to the back of my mind.
Got to say as well, Big Lewis over at MMA UK, he's been talking about you for years.
Lewis,
just to choke through.
Yeah, Lewis actually used to be a training with us. That's how I met Lewis, and he got into the journalism and all that. And he's doing well now, so I'm glad to see that he's still doing it, because it's like when everybody's had a pop at MMA journalism, I think. So to see him doing well is good.
No, he's doing great over there. And I think just the last few questions from us, I'll bring James in a minute. What's the future look like for you then? Have you heard anything from the UFC? Is there anything in the pipeline at all?
No, I haven't heard nothing, like no official word. I spoke to Graham, and I've said to him, I'd like to fight now, ideally November. October was probably a little bit too soon, because obviously we did a short camp for this one, which was 7 weeks. I usually like a little bit longer than that if I can. And obviously I want a bit of time now to improve technically, let my body eat a little bit, not so much from the fight, but just from the training camp. It is having a short camp like that. We had to get a lot in a short space of time. So, I just need my body to heal a little bit, take a little bit of pressure off myself. And just a couple of weeks now, technique, relax a little bit, enjoy the summer, and then sort of mid to end of August, just get back to it then, and hopefully we can get a nice long camp in, ready for November, and I can go in nice and sharp. I don't know whether they're going to go back to Fight Island or what. I see now there's a couple of British and European guys who've been matched out in Vegas, so I'm assuming that's going to be a possibility now as well. So we'll just wait and see. I'm sure Graham's in the know-how, so I'm sure as soon as he hears any news, he'll get to me and we can start getting the wheel turning again. Yeah.
And James, have you got anything else just before we...
I have a couple of things. Are you 25, Jack?
Yeah, 25.
You sound like maybe the smartest 25-year-old I've ever met in MMA, because the rest of them are just like, next fight, give me the next. They're not talking about getting technically better in between fights and shit like that, but it's refreshing, man. I was just wanting to talk about Brett being at the gym as well. Like, potentially the two best bantamweights in Europe in that gym. And your gym's always had good bantamweights and lighter guys like Chris Edwards and Martin McDonough and stuff like that. So it must be like the training environment there for you must be like fantastic now for both you guys. And you can see like you've got younger guys coming through now. And did you ever get pressured into? We get this quite a bit up here. Where do you ever get that pressure where people are like, are you going to go to America and train and stuff like that? And it irritates me, because your dad's built this gym for like a couple mats in a garage type of thing, to an extent now where if you're a bantamweight in Europe, they should be coming to you to train, like to get access to the best guys. And what do you think about that kind of stuff? Like the training environment you've got must be fantastic for guys running about your weight.
Yeah, well, obviously since Brett has come up and obviously we've got the young guns coming through. Like I think from sort of flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, we've got a good few there now coming through, either novice pros or amateurs, top end of the scale amateurs. So the level of training and sparring we're having at the minute on the mats is unbelievable. And again, like there's no two other sort of bantamweights who are at the level that me and Brett are at in the world training with each other. So since he's come up to the gym, like, we have days where he'll batter me and days where I'll have the better of him and days where it's 50-50. And sort of when me and him are put in the cage to spar or on the mat to wrestle, neither of us is going to be able to have sort of a round off or a round relaxing. And we're starting to see that now as well with the up-and-comers as well. Even like amateur guys are jumping in and helping us out, and they're not an easy round or a round you can take off. So like you said, if you're a sort of bantamweight or a featherweight that trains in the UK or trains in Europe, there's no reason why you shouldn't be seeking to come and do a bit of training with us. Like I've been to America, I've been to Jackson's for a month to train. And to be honest, like that was sort of 3 years ago. Looking now at the level we have on the mat now compared to the level that was on the mat back then, I'd say we probably got a better level, but we've also got less people there. So we've got coaches that can give you a little bit more attention and give you those pointers, where as good as like the Jackson Wink is and the TriStars are and the American Top Team, when you've got 80 MMA fighters on the mat all sparring and training, who are they going to give the attention to? It's going to be the top guys, and the guys just bringing the money and the attention to the gym. Whereas in our gym, yeah, we might have 80 for a jiu-jitsu class, but you narrow it down for our MMA sparring. There's probably a maximum of 20, if that, in the gym. So there's plenty of room, and there's plenty of time for the coaches to pick out faults and give us pointers, without having to worry about certain people not getting attention. So, to be honest, I think the days of going to America to train are gone. I don't think we need to go there anymore. For years, it was, the British guys can't wrestle. They can't wrestle with the Americans. Where you watch the UFC now, there's not many times where a Russian or an American will just purely wrestle a British guy for the duration of the fight. I mean, you see it with like Khabib and stuff like that, but that's sort of a different level of wrestling, if that makes sense. So yeah. I think the days of having to go to America are gone, especially in the UK now. There's so many good gyms about. Obviously, you got yourself in Scotland, that's in Wales. You got SBG out in Ireland. You got some top gyms in England as well. Those days are gone, and you only got to look at the results that the British are having in the UFC, especially against America. Like my last two opponents have been American. One trained with Dustin Poirier and one was from AKA. So, and I managed to out-wrestle the pair of them. So it just goes to show the level in the UK and Wales and England and Scotland and Ireland now is there. It's just a matter of, seeking out that training and brushing your ego aside and going to the slightly bigger gyms maybe and the gyms with a better level of coaching, instead of staying sort of to the more local gyms.
Brilliant. Thanks very much thanks Jack for coming on and doing this. I think not just Wales, but I think the full of the UK is really excited, and Europe as well, excited to see how your career progresses. We look forward to seeing you back in there, and I think the future is very bright for you at this moment in time.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's gone well so far. So I got a good team around me, good teammates. My family and friends are very supportive. So fingers crossed I can keep the ball rolling then and keep the hype train steaming forward, and hopefully it doesn't come to a crash.
Well, that's it. Perfect. Well, listen, thanks again very much for coming on and doing this, Jack. We appreciate your time, mate. Cheers.
No problem, lads. Enjoyed it, and we'll do it again sometime, I'm sure.